This is Echelon, a game I vividly recall buying for my Amiga. I went down to the high street and into my favourite computer shop, Megabytes, and looked at the shelves. But on this occasion, it was purely the box art that sold the game to me. I knew nothing about this game, but the writing on the back, the screenshots, and the wonderful spaceship and alien landscape on the front were enough to relieve me of my paper round money that day. I've mentioned a few times my very clear memories of buying Echelon for the Amiga. Also, I remember buying Indianapolis 500 from here, Echelon, the Amiga version, including once on the podcast This Week in Retro.
Because this is actually the Spectrum version of Echelon.
Yeah, I'll hold that up to the camera. Tell us why you picked this one out.
Because I actually had the Amiga version, and I don't know, it might be a blurred memory, but I swear the box was slightly bigger for the Amiga version. That might be wrong, but it is a game that I bought for the Amiga back in the day from Megabytes.
And also in my own pickups videos. There's a copy of Echelon. Now, also for the ZX Spectrum, I had Echelon on the Amiga back in the day. But there's a problem. Echelon was never released on the Amiga. This is actually a new old stock version for the Spectrum, kindly gifted to me by Simon from Ginger Hippie Gaming. But I'm very clear about my memories of my gaming past. That's literally what this channel is about. And I'm having trouble reconciling this one. So today we're basically going to try and fix that memory. Echelon was released for the Spectrum and other systems, including DOS PC, which is relevant, in either 1987 or 1988, depending on the sources you read. The Spectrum Plus 3 launched in 1987, and I got mine in November for my birthday, thanks to my brother John. At this point, I think it would just be wise to play the Spectrum version, which is what I've got here, and let's see if this actually rings any bells. Okay, some quick bit of overlay here of me struggling to get a hang of the controls, and also the frustration of how do you get out of the space station, and that certainly rings many bells. Okay, because I was thinking you had to go down the middle, and I remember going over and over and over in frustration when I originally got this game. But what you actually do is you just hold down the fire button, push forward, and it will edge you forward. And then once you leave the base, you will be able to speed up. Okay, so we have, and it is choppy. I thought I remembered it being smoother. I certainly remember the grid, and I remember your ability to turn off the grid. Right, so it's a whole massive map, look. It's a whole massive map. So, first of all, the grid, we're in B3, because that's where the base station is, and then we are in F6. And look, all this other area is uncharted. So we want to go south. So we're going to turn, so we're at 180. That should get us going in the right direction. Oh, and look, you can see the space station up the top there. That's where we dropped down from. 180. Right, let's see if we can find the bridge. See, I thought there were hills and stuff as well. Right, we're going to start flying. Okay, so it should be here, should be coming up here. And I think I can see where the intersection is, and here we are. Here we are, here's the bridge. So let's go down. Oh, just smashed into the ground, which this game doesn't seem to care about. There we go. There's the bridge. Now, do I remember it being this choppy? I don't know. Oh, and there are mountains, look. Over here. There are mountains. Now, if I remember, you can just fly through the mountains, and that annoyed me. Let's get down. And turn off the grid. I like doing this. Here we go. But you can't see where the floor is. And you can... Yeah, you can just fly through the mountains. And that bugged me. Okay, right. So there's some valid memories here. Right, let's try and find... Let's bring ourselves to a standstill. And I want to try and find the floating tunnel. Because, oddly enough, my memories of the floating tunnel are that it chugged a bit. I do remember that chugging. Now if I press W, this should give me a rear view. Yes, I remember the wings on the ship. I remember that. So Q is front. W, is it E and R? I'm looking at the controls here. And you can see the wings on the ship. But this particularly, I remember that. I do remember that. Okay, so these boxes, I believe, are the tunnel. I remember it being frustrating to fly. I do remember that. And not lightning fast, if I'm honest. Not lightning fast like Mercenary, which is a wireframe game on the Amiga, and it absolutely flies, as does Sky Chase. Absolutely flogs along. As you would expect, a wireframe game on a 16-bit platform. This could be it. This definitely could be it. So it's hard to tell. I absolutely remember the frustration with getting out of the space station and the fact that you kind of bump these invisible walls, and so you can't really tell why it is that you can't leave the space station. Absolutely remember that. The floating tunnel, as soon as I saw that on the map and it gives you the description, that was like, oh yeah, the floating tunnel. And I remember there being bridges, and I was right about there being hills and stuff. This could very well be the version I played. It absolutely could be. So with that in mind, let's give the PC version a try and see if that sparks any memories. This kind of HUD doesn't ring the bells. So I'm just pressing plus on the numeric keypad to move forward, and instantly, well, this is faster. This machine is out of turbo mode. This is lightning fast. And actually, let's just go back. Okay, we're going back. Because the other thing to note here is, we've just gone through a grid. I'm not getting the frustration. Yes, I can bump into the floor, but I'm not getting the frustration that I had in the other version. Because it lets me, in fact, it's just let me fly out the top. I don't know what's going on. What we're going to do is we're going to see if any of these map coordinates match up. So Heading 00. Oh, first of all, what about weapon sounds? Do we get weapon sounds? PC speaker. I don't remember. Don't remember that. Here's another clue. I do not remember. See all the different colours? You've got the hills there. You can turn off the dots. The dots are grid. So rather than a grid, it's dots. That doesn't ring any bells. Coloured hills does not ring any bells. Let's have a look at the... we'll go and find the bridge. It's quite nice. It's nice and smooth. Here we go. Bridge is enter. Enter is not. Enter does not stop you like it did on the other version. Right, I'm going to have to do a loop of shame. Interestingly, I'm moving on the flat plane when I must have toggled something. There we go, there's a bridge. So rather than banking, what happens when you hit the floor? Oh! And that's not how I remember it. Right, let's try flying through a hill. Oh no, that is not a hill. That is the space station. There were some hills up this way, so my shield's down to 52. Right, here's some hills. Can you just fly through the hills? Or is it going to hurt me? Shield's at 52. You can just fly through the hills. Right, let's see if we can find that tunnel. There's the tunnel, and again, it's blue. This isn't ringing the bells. No. It's easier though. It's nicer. That's forward. There's the rear. There we go. And that's one wing, and that's the other wing, and they're solid. That doesn't ring bells at all. And the colours don't match my memories. So that's interesting. This version doesn't ring any bells whatsoever, I don't think. And it's interesting that the Spectrum version didn't ring instant bells either, but it's certainly a lot closer than this. So was it the Spectrum version? Was it the PC version, or was it something in between, like the Amiga version? Does it maybe actually exist? So why the obsession with fixing this memory, and why was it an incorrect memory in the first place? Well, some of that's a story for another day, because it goes into the history of the computer shops in my hometown of Tunbridge Wells. But I definitely remember buying this game from the little shop on the high street, Megabytes, very specific looking shop. And the time that I remember going to that shop was in my Amiga years. Specifically, my Amiga years. I didn't think they were open before then. And I certainly don't think they were open for very long after I jumped to PC, if at all. So the annoying thing is, the existence of this shop is on the cusp of me changing from the Spectrum to the Amiga, and the shop disappearing is on the cusp of me jumping from the Amiga to the PC, which make both versions of this game viable, given apparently it wasn't the Amiga version. So we're going to have to go by the gameplay that I've done today and that I've shared with you, and I'm going to call it. I think it was the Spectrum version, because even though I said I thought it was smoother, it certainly wasn't smooth. I remember it chugging, and I remember specifically turning the grid off and on, because that seemed to make the game run a little bit faster, especially when flying through the tunnels, if I turned the grid off. I think it was definitely this version. And look, a wireframe game like this would not chug on the Amiga. Things like Mercenary absolutely fly, as do Sky Chase. And also, as we saw on the 386DX in the other room, this exact game on that machine absolutely flies. Plus, it has multicolours to the wireframe. I remember it being monochrome. So I think it's this, which is a wonderful thing because it means that this mint in-box new old stock copy gifted to me from Simon from Ginger Hippie Gaming represents the very game I've been looking for. And more than that, I believe this now replaces two very special things. The last game I ever bought for my Spectrum, and the first game I ever bought from Megabytes, my favourite shop on the High Street in Royal Tunbridge Wells. Thank you for watching. That's the first time that's come out in about 40 years. Nearly. Never been played.